What is up, heroes? This is Midnight Zero, and welcome to Week 1 of the NCPL Season 4. In this week, we are going up against Chase, coach of the Big Island Buizels. You can see his team on screen right now. Yes, I'm going to be doing the team builders like this until I have a lot of time. I really like the production quality of last season, Season 3 of the NCPL, but I just don't know if I can do that right now, so try and bear with me, guys. Regardless, let's take a look at his team. So we've got a lot of threats, a lot of mixed mons. I really think one of the difficulties this season is going to be preparing for 14 mons in a freestyle draft. I had so much difficulty because so many of these mons are actually really good and could do a lot of different things very well. So when you have 14 of them and they're all, in that higher echelon, if not like, low, higher echelon, like high mid-tier Pokemon, it's really difficult to choose a team of 6 that can actually adequately handle all of them. So I think that's going to be a challenge going forward in this season. But regardless, getting into his team, his mega pick is Mega Ampharos. It is a bulky mon while still having great natural special attack. It can definitely hit hard. It can agility up. Offensive set. Very common one is Rest Talk with Volt Switch and Dragon Pulse. And yeah, Azelf, typically seen as a suicide lead with Stealth Rocks, Taunt, Explosion, maybe Screens. Can also really take advantage of its base 125 attack and special attack and decent speed tier to hit hard on either side, whether Psychic, Flamethrower, can run Scarf U-Turn, shout out to Sam. There's a lot it can really do. Next up would be Togekiss, a bit of a stall breaker. It is annoying to face, that's all I can really say about it. It flinches things with Air Slash a lot, it nasty plots up. It can Baton Pass, it can defog, it gets access to Flamethrower, which is of note. But yeah, it's really just kind of annoying Pokemon to deal with. Golurk. Golurk is slow and decently bulky and has a great attack stat while also having, some solid abilities that give it more options. This is an underrated Pokemon. Very much an underrated Pokemon. One of the harder Pokemon I actually had to prep for. So I'm going to need to play well around Golurk if he does bring Golurk. Next up is going to be Exploud. Exploud it's just kind of a wall breaker. It hits really hard with Specs Boom Burst, and that's kind of it. It doesn't have an incredible base special attack. You can see it right here, that 91. But at the end of the day, when you have a really high base power Boom Burst, Stab, throw Specs on it, and Scrappy, so it's hitting Ghost types as well, it's going to be putting in a lot of work. Next up is Infernape, his Z Captain, meaning this mon can use any Z move unless it's an Omni boosting Z move. I don't think Infernape gets any of those, but Infernape is a really good Pokemon. I've really enjoyed using Infernape when I had the chance to use Infernape in the past. Great Scarf user, great Life Orb user. It can be Stealth Rock, Will-O-Wisp, it can be physical, it can be special, it can be mixed. It can run Z Sunny Day, which is definitely one thing that I'm expecting. It's got great move coverage. It can run Tectonic Rage, Gigavolt Havoc, of course Inferno Overdrive and All Out Pummeling. It can run Acid Downpour. It can run a whole bunch of Z moves and has really great coverage. It's a little on the weak side, but a little bit of chip and throw a Life Orb on it and it's able to clean up. Next up is Galvantula. Galvantula, as you might expect, webs. That's really the main threat with Galvantula, is every single week Chase can bring webs if he wants to, and that is incredibly difficult to team prep for, and yeah, that's really all the threat that Galvantula holds. I mean, it's got a decent special attack stat in addition to Compound-Eyes Thunder, so it can really hit hard with that base 110 electric type attack that's also going to be Stab, so it doesn't have to rely on the weak Thunderbolt, kind of making up for that special attack stat, but again, webs are the real threat with that one. Next up is going to be Drapion, another Pokemon that I've used in the past. It's decently bulky while having a pretty strong Stab knockoff. You can set up Toxic Spikes. It's generally pretty bulky. I didn't like it too much. It could get the job done at times though. Bibarel, it's such a derpy Pokemon, but it can actually put in work because of its ability Simple. Its ability Simple means that rather than, I think, like 2 boosts, or you get like 1 extra boost pretty much whenever you boost up. So if Bibarel were to use Swords Dance, its attack would increase 3 stages as opposed to 2, making it obviously a little bit more threatening than typical mon that, you just boost up, a couple stages. It has access to Priority and Aqua Jet, Stab Aqua Jet at that. So you slap a Life Orb on it, make it Adamant, and get 1 SD, and you're sitting at 2.5 times attack, 1.3 times Life Orb boost, 1.5 times Stab boosted Aqua Jets. It's definitely a threat to be reckoned, and actually something I think I'm relatively unprepared for, or less prepared for. Next up is going to be his Z secondary mon, his Simisage, which also has great coverage. I kind of underestimated this threat. It has access to a pretty powerful Leaf Storm, it gets access to Knockoff and a couple other coverage moves. So as an offensive Z user, it has that coverage to really hit things hard. I don't really know how it's typically used, but we'll see if he brings it or not. He might, given I might bring Grassy Terrain. And then next up is going to be Noivern. It's actually a default user. Its Infiltrator ability is going to be relevant. It can attack past substitutes, which is worth noting, and it has decent special attack with access to some great stabs in Hurricane and Draco Meteor. Of course, accuracy is a thing, right? Need to worry about accuracy. It also has good coverage though, with Flamethrower, and I think even Water Pulse maybe? I think Water Pulse too, actually. And yeah, it can also run Dragon Pulse and Air Slash, of course. Next up is Sudowoodo. I'm not too worried about Sudowoodo because of so many, rock resistances, but when you make this thing Adamant Max Attack, slap a Choice Band on it, Head Smash is doing a lot of damage. That is a strong base stab, or base attack plus stab, It's a powerful hitting mon. It's just really slow, and of course there are a lot of rock resistances running around, so you can set up on it, but it's definitely something worth noting. Metagross is another good Pokemon. It can run a wide variety of sets, typically Choice Band or AV, Assault Vest, with great move coverage and stuff like Earthquake, Hammer Arms, Zen Headbutt, Meteor Mash, Thunder Punch, Ice Punch, Bullet Punch, Agility. It's got a lot of options, so it can really do a lot offensively, and thanks to its nice natural bulk and defensive typing, it can actually tank hits pretty well too. So definitely something to be reckoned. And then lastly is Frogadier, the pre-evolved form of Greninja. It's a little bit too weak to be considered a threat. It can be an effective Scarf user because of its speed tier. Protean makes it interesting because of, changing typing, obviously. Everything becomes a bit more stronger because of Stab. But, again, still on the weak side. So that's his team. I did a little bit of scouting. I watched a couple of his battles. He does have a YouTube channel. I'll link that in the description. And, yeah, he seems like he definitely knows what he's talking about, right? Like, he's in a few leagues. I've watched some of his team builders. I've watched some of his battles. I haven't gotten to see him battle, like, in the moment live. It's always been post-replay. But at least when it comes to team building, he definitely knows how to tailor his EVs to outspeed certain threats, to take certain hits well, to do a certain amount of damage. So I know he can team build well. My initial thoughts are that he relies a little bit too much on his team building. He team preps for certain threats, but doesn't take any risks in the battle. He doesn't ever really pull doubles or make hard reads or the like, and just relies on having a perfect mon to switch in that he's prepped for a particular situation for each battle. So I don't anticipate him taking many risks with his moves. I instead expect maybe some out-of-the-box sets for certain mons. And I'm not saying he's bad. I'm just saying this is one of the weaknesses I think I can exploit in our match, and I very much intend to do so. But yeah, that's his team. Let's take a look at our team. The first mon we've got on our team is going to be Tsuyu-chan, our Greninja. I wanted some offense. For sure. I want to run, my typical bulky offensive teams. But looking at Greninja, look at this set. Surf, Dark Pulse, Ice Beam, Water Shuriken. Look at his team. Almost everything takes super effective damage from one of Greninja's moves. And what doesn't is still not really bulky enough to take hits very well. And the priority is going to be really helpful, so like, Surf hits just about everything really hard, Dark Pulse hits everything really hard, Ice Beam hits things really hard, and then Water Shuriken still does a decent amount of damage, and it could be really helpful against some faster threats, especially if he brings webs, where I can, get some priority damage off on something like Infernape, for example, which I think does 75% minimum with 3 hits. So after 2 rock switch-ins, he's good. And if he's naive nature, because he's a mixed set, so his speed def is low, it'll do 88% min. So it only requires 1 stealth rock switch-in. So yeah, as far as the speed goes, I'm really just outspeeding the relevant things. Modest Noivern, I think, is the only thing I'm planning on outspeeding, because Noivern actually outspeeds Greninja by 1 point if it is fastest. So I do think that he will be forced to run that fast speed, or that fast Noivern if he does bring it. But outside of that, there's no reason to really bring enough speed to even challenge that speed tie. So I have enough speed to outspeed a modest Noivern and all of his other fast threats. And what's also really cool is that at -1, if he does bring webs, I still outspeed Golurk. So I don't have to worry about taking hits from that or having to go for Water Shuriken. I can knock that out with a Surf or a Dark Pulse. Also, Surf, I'm not running Hydro Pump for obvious reasons. Don't want to risk the miss. That's all it comes down to. The special attack is max because I want to do as much damage as possible. The HP is to hit a Life Orb number. For those of you that don't know, a Life Orb number, whenever you take Life Orb recoil, you lose 10% of your HP. And because Pokemon rounds down, you want to have as much HP as possible while having minimal Life Orb recoil. So if you have some multiple of 10 minus 1, your number rounded down will be some number 0.9, which will then be rounded down to the lowest integer, or like the nearest integer, right? Less than it. So you maximize your HP points while reducing your Life Orb recoil, so you can actually get one extra Life Orb hit, assuming you don't get hit, right? But like, obviously you just want to optimize it as well as you can. So yeah, that's why Greninja's coming around. Next up is going to be Uraraka Ochako, the Porygon 2. I am pretty straightforward with this set, right? It's just max Spadef. This doesn't mean I didn't like tailor the EVs or anything like that, or didn't look into the calcs. It really just makes sense to have as much special bulk on this as possible. Looking at his team, he doesn't really have a lot of physical threats. He really doesn't. He can have Azelf potentially. Golurk is a threat. Infernape can be a physical threat, but like, Drapion is not really threatening to any of my defensive mons. Bibarel isn't really that threatening to any of my defensive mons. Same with Sudowoodo, same with Metagross even. So all I really needed to worry about was Golurk and Infernape, and my other Pokemon, just by nature of their natural defense and typing, can take on those mons decently well if they are physical. So yeah, max Spadef to deal with all of his really strong special attackers like Mega Ampharos, potentially Togekiss, Exploud, Infernape, Galvantula. Those are the real offensive threats on his team, in my opinion. And I'm still taking hits from something like Golurk really well. Adamant, Life Orb, Earthquake doesn't 2-hit KO my Porygon 2, and I do a ton of damage back with Ice Beam. Ice Beam, or Bolt Beam coverage, covers his team really well. Take a look, it's going to hit everything on his team, and probably super effectively. And I also am running Toxic because chip damage is going to be super, super important, especially on the few bulky mon that he does decide to bring, if he does bring them. Toxic is going to be really important at whittling away at them and allowing my other Pokemon to take advantage of them, right? My offense this week is not super, super strong. It is going to require a decent amount of chip before I can pick up knockouts. So something like Toxic is a catch-all move to weaken just about anything, right? And then Recover for obvious reasons. I decided not to use Trace because he doesn't really have any Pokemon with abilities that Porygon 2 can really take advantage of. So it just didn't really make a lot of sense. Maybe like Serene Grace Togekiss, but that's about it, and that's a bit too unreliable. So I went with Download so that I have the chance to get the +1 special attack boost, and I can, actually pick up some 2-hit KOs on mons without even any special attack investment. So yeah, Porygon 2 is really bulky. There's actually a lot of defensive pressure on Porygon 2 this week. So yeah, gonna need to play really well with Porygon 2. Next up is going to be Bronzong Lidiamu, and it is also max Spadef. You might be wondering why. Again, for the same rationale, right? All of his physical threats I don't really need to worry about, right? Golurk is going to be 2-hit KOing Bronzong with Shadow Ball or Shadow Punch, and there's not really a lot I can do, and I don't want to take away all of its Spadef utility to have that one threat in check. And that's just kind of how it is. I'm running Levitate this week so that I have another immunity to Golurk's Earthquake to eventually chip away at that, to not put all of that pressure on the next Pokemon as far as ground immunities go. And yeah, it takes Boom Bursts really well. It takes a lot of pressure off of Porygon 2. A lot of what Porygon 2 is hit really hard by, or at least neutrally by, Bronzong can take on really well. This helps out a lot with Mega Ampharos' Dragon-type moves. It helps out with Togekiss's Air-type, Flying-type moves. It takes on, Boom Burst from Exploud really well. It takes on Simisage's Grass-type moves. It can have a really powerful, Leaf Storm. It takes on Draco from Noivern. It takes on Hurricane from Noivern. So it's really relieving a lot of pressure off of Porygon 2. And as far as its moveset goes, Gyro Ball is just consistent damage. My Bronzong is really slow, so it's going to be getting really powerful Gyro Balls off. And, Toxic is there for reliable chip. Again, reliable chip over time is going to be a theme of this match. And then Stealth Rock. Do I need to say reliable chip again? And Trick Room. Trick Room is a bit of an interesting one. I was considering running Protect on this just to continue to chip away at things and give myself a little bit of passive recovery, but I really ended up going with Trick Room because I needed a better webs option. I'm not running hazard control this week, which is actually really scary because rocks could render Porygon 2 significantly less able to act as a pivot, as a bulky pivot. But I'm not running hazard control this week, even though he has the chance to bring webs, because I didn't want to fit it on the one Pokemon I'm bringing that can run it for the sake of its other set. But Trick Room allows me to actually put in work. Some of my faster Mons will outspeed his fastest Mons out of Trick Room, but then in Trick Room will underspeed all of his relevant Mons. Like anything faster than Golurk is pretty much what I got it EV'd to. So Trick Room could actually play a huge role if he sets up webs in helping me sweep him towards the end. And if he does bring webs, Bronzong becomes that much more important, and I need to protect that Bronzong so that I have that Trick Room option. And yeah. Next up is my next defensive mon, which is going to be Gliscor, also near max Spadef with a little bit of HP, or not, with a little bit of speed to outspeed Golurk. It is a sub-tech set. I don't really know what else to say. I'm probably going to get a lot of flack, a little bit of hate for this, especially if it matters in the match. But it kind of is what it needs to be. If he's got a physically offensive Infernape, I can take that on naturally by typing. If I need to take on Golurk and it's toxic, I can take that on because I outspeed it. I can protect and then substitute up on it. Basically, the idea is after 2 turns of passive recovery with Poison Heal, I regain 25% HP, so I regain my substitute. So as long as something is toxic and being chipped away at, or even potentially PP stalled if necessary, not that I like to have to go there, I can protect, I can substitute, I can protect over and over and not really lose any HP while the opponent is losing PP or HP if toxic, which is also why toxic is on this thing. And toxic in general is really important on this team, why I have it on Porygon 2 and Bronzong. This is also a really helpful ground immunity to help out with Golurk having to predict to go for Earthquake, on potential, or like, you know, Shadow Punch on potential Bronzong. You'll notice that Golurk, right? It's either Earthquake, Shadow Punch, or Ice Punch. And then maybe a Dynamic Punch if he's no guard, or a Fire Punch. But look at my 3 defensive core mons. Porygon 2 is immune to Shadow Punch. Both Gliscor and Bronzong are immune to Earthquake. And Bronzong heavily resists Ice Punch. So it's always going to be a guessing game, and it's going to be really helpful if he is toxic and being whittled away at while that is all going on. I can potentially protect with Gliscor to kind of hurry up the process, really get in his head, mess around with things, and yeah, that's the idea. I can also, if I bait him into Ice Punching, I can actually switch into my Greninja. It takes 1 Ice Punch pretty well, and then I get a really hard-hitting Surf off, or Dark Pulse, so definitely worth considering. And yeah, this mon is like a kind of catch-all be-all. If I double this mon in or get this mon in, can set up a substitute, whatever comes in, if it's poisoned, is probably going to die. So that's why getting toxic off early in the game is going to be really important. And this mon really helps support and take on any mon that he could bring, except for Noivern because of Infiltrator. That's why I mentioned Infiltrator being potentially relevant earlier. Next up is going to be Raikou 0. I always like to name Raikou after myself. It is running a Calm Mind leftovers, T-Bolt, HP Ice, and Volt Switch. It's an interesting set. I'm outspeeding everything that's relevant, basically Infernape's tier and below. Yet after webs at -1, I'm still outspeeding Golurk, and I'm underspeeding all of his more offensive threats. Just to clarify, Golurk is base 55 speed. So anything slower than that, I outspeed at -1. But in Trick Room at -1, I outspeed everything else. So that includes Togekiss, Infernape, Noivern, Bidoof, Drapion, like. That's why it's an important speed tier for me this week. But the special attack is there because I just want to hit as hard as possible, but I don't need 252 special attack to really pick up any meaningful 2-hit KOs, whereas the HP is helpful for taking minimal stealth rock damage and hitting a leftovers number. Again, just a little bit of math. Any multiple of 16 is important to hit with leftovers because it's like the opposite of the Life Orb thing. You want to have you don't want to be over a leftovers number so that there's some sort of remainder that gets rounded down, because then you're adding HP, but you're not increasing the amount of leftovers you're getting. So it's not as efficient per se. So what I usually do is I hit a multiple of 16 and then add 3. And that's because when you take Stealth Rock damage, you do want to have as much HP as possible before hitting the next multiple of 4 so that the damage you take is rounded down. So again, multiple of 16 plus 3 is a good way to have a Mon that is optimized for potentially taking Stealth Rock while also having leftovers. So that's what's going on here. Thunderbolt is doing a lot of damage to just about everything, and when it's not hitting, HP Ice is doing a lot too. Volt Switch is there for momentum, so I can get in potentially my defensive Mons, potentially set up Rocks, potentially set up Trick Room, potentially Toxic, whatever's coming in, and Calm Mind is there in case I do want to set up on something. If I am provided the opportunity, if I have significant chip damage on the relevant threats, I can come in, Calm Mind once, take hits from Infernape or Galvantula decently well. I can at least take one hit to boost up my attack to a point where it's actually really threatening, and then potentially sweep there because of Raikou's speed tier. So yeah, that's definitely a potential win condition here. And oh, I should also mention I'm always going to bring Shiny Raikou because there's an interesting set on Raikou with Aura Sphere for coverage, but it is only available from an event Raikou a ways back when I think Heart Gold came out that had a Shiny Raikou with a Rash Nature. So every time you have Aura Sphere on your Raikou, you have to run Shiny and you have to run Rash Nature. I personally like Shiny Raikou more than normal Raikou, so I was planning on going with it anyways, but if I were to suddenly bring Shiny Raikou, then it would indicate to my opponent that I might have Aura Sphere because I might needed to have run Shiny Raikou that week. So I'm just going to bring Shiny Raikou every week to just keep my opponent guessing as much as possible. I think that's the same with Move Tutors and Greninja as well. Not 100% sure, but last Mon is going to be Garchomp, a named Garchomp Senji, aka Crow from Deadman Wonderland, for those of you wondering. And it's pretty straightforward. It's a Scarf Garchomp. It hits hard, it outspeeds everything that's relevant, basically his base 101 Mon, and yeah, Earthquake, Outrage is really all I need this week. Earthquake hits a lot of things hard, and Outrage hits things even harder. He's only got one Fairy type in Togekiss, and he's got one Steel type in Metagross. Once those things are weakened and or gone, Outrage clean sweeps him. It does 70, 80% damage to just about everything on his team, so all it takes is a little bit of chip, make sure rocks are up, and Scarf Outrage could definitely win me the game. So that's why that's there. In case I do need to threaten something out or hit something hard or outspeed something earlier in the game and I don't want to lock myself into something like Outrage, I have Dragon Claw as well and Stone Edge in case I want to hit a potential Togekiss. Again, Stone Edge has a chance to miss, which is not something I like to do. So yeah, I'm not really planning on using it, but that's the team, guys. It is really, it's a really mixed team. I feel okay about it. I tailored it to his team, and I think it's the team to get the job done, but I don't feel like it's a very solid team. The offense I do have is not super strong. I have a Life Orb Greninja, and I have, leftovers Raikou, which can put in work after some chip, but they're not really, they're not your Thundurus Teas, they're not your Kartanas, they're not your Tapu Bulus that just really hit things hard. Not that I don't have some of those Mons, right? Like I have Typhlosion, I have Tapu Bulu, but I just don't think they do well enough against enough of his Mons to warrant bringing. So I definitely need to get up a lot of chip. I need to draw out the battle as I, whittle things away with Stealth Rock and Toxic, and that's how I'm going to potentially win with my offensive Mons, whether that's Scarf Chomp, which is probably my biggest offensive threat, or Greninja. As far as webs go, that adds a whole new aspect to the game. If he brings webs, there's not a lot I can do about it. All I can really do is try to continue to chip away and then set up Trick Rooms so that my offensive threats can win. It's really a different game plan and honestly a lot more difficult. So I hope he doesn't bring webs. I really hope he doesn't bring webs. But if he does, we're gonna have to play really well around it. I think this team can get the job done. And I think it might be one of the best teams I can make to get the job done, but it's not perfect, and it's going to require me to play well in the match. Like I can't just sit back on my team and be like, oh, my team's got a solid matchup. We probably got this. This is a team where if I do mess up, I can get screwed over really, really quickly. So I need to play on point. I need to keep my defensive core healthy, and I need to get the sufficient amount of chip to set up for my offensive Mons. Sometimes it might even require sacking an offensive Mon or two to set up for the last one that can maybe then clean up with Outrage, right? If I need to get a little bit of chip on one Pokemon for Garchomp to be able to just click Outrage and win, I might have to sack Greninja to get off a little bit of Water Shuriken damage. But that's the game we play. So I'm hoping I can do well. It's been a while. It's been a while since I've played competitive Mons. I've been watching, of course, been keeping up, and I think I'll be all right. But I'm actually a little nervous, if you understand. I'm really nervous, but I'm looking forward to the match. So good luck to you, Chase, and I hope you guys are looking forward to the match. But until then, this has been Midnight Zero, and this mission is complete.